From now on, just call him 007. British actor Pierce Brosnan is stepping into the role of super spy James Bond.
Bond. James Bond.
Tomorrow Never Dies is the second film starring Pierce Brosnan as 007.
My name's Bond, James Bond, and I'm licensed to kill. I'm Roger Moore, so watch The Spy Who Loved Me, and you'll love James Bond.
Daniel Craig has signed up for 2 more Bond films.
Daniel Craig's return to play James Bond is double official.
This next James Bond film is going to be my last, but it's going to be one of the best. The name's Bond. James Bond.
The name James Bond doesn't just resonate in the world of cinema. It embodies an entire genre, a cultural movement, and a marketing phenomenon. But how did a character from a 1953 spy novel evolve into one of the most enduring and marketable film icons in history? Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating journey of how James Bond went from page to screen and became a global sensation, revolutionizing both the movie industry and the world of marketing along the way. In the beginning, there was a man with a mission, but not yet a screen presence. James Bond was born from the pen of British author Ian Fleming, whose unique creation was first introduced in the 1953 novel Casino Royale. Bond wasn't your typical hero. He wasn't the squeaky clean good guy. He was tough, suave, and very much human, complete with flaws and emotions. In fact, this complexity is part of what made him instantly relatable to readers. But despite Fleming's success with the novels, it wasn't until the decision was made to bring this character to the silver screen that the world got its first taste of what was to come. Enter Albert R., Cubby Broccoli, and Harry Saltzman. These 2 producers saw something special in the character, and together they worked tirelessly to bring Bond to life on the big screen. They knew they had a potential hit on their hands, but there was one question. Who could possibly embody this suave, dangerous yet charming British spy? Enter Sean Connery. In 1962,
Connery was cast as James Bond for the film Dr. No. His portrayal brought to life everything readers imagined.
And more. Smooth, calculating, and quick-witted, Sean Connery was able to present Bond as a man who could blend seamlessly into high society or punch his way out of the tightest situations. Connery's Bond wasn't just a suave agent. He was a legend in the making. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Bond wasn't just another spy film. It had an unmistakable formula right from the start. Fast cars, shaken not stirred martinis, exotic locations, beautiful women, and a multitude of cool gadgets. These things were hardly a coincidence. They were all carefully crafted to build the most stylish and epic spy world cinema had ever seen. This wasn't merely a movie franchise. It was a carefully constructed fantasy, designed not only to entertain, but to offer an aspirational lifestyle that audiences would eagerly buy into. And guess what? They did in droves. Through each subsequent movie, the character of Bond morphed, improved, and expanded into something even bigger. But it wasn't just the on-screen moments that kept Bond at the forefront of global culture. The very essence of the franchise had found a way to interact with audiences through extensive and ever-evolving marketing strategies. As the Bond films continued to thrive, so did the opportunities for iconic merchandising. Moviegoers didn't just leave the theater, they took part of the franchise home with them. Cars, suits, watches, and even aftershave quickly became synonymous with 07's lavish lifestyle. Bond wasn't simply a character on the screen, he was a brand, a personification of the high-end luxury and adventure many could only dream of. The introduction of Bond's cars, particularly the infamous Aston Martin DB5 in Goldfinger, 1964, also marked a significant chapter in the cinematic history of branding and product placement. The car wasn't just a cool vehicle for Bond to escape enemy agents. It became a symbol of Bond's status. The genius behind this was simple but powerful. This was marketing directly embedded into the film's narrative. Aston Martin had its moment on the big screen, and Bond drove away with his car into cinema history. As we fast forward through the years, Bond's marketing became even more prominent. A luxury watch brand, Omega, aligned itself with the franchise, helping cement the connection between Bond and high-end products. Over the years, every Bond film released new lines of fashion, accessories, and tech, from branded clothing to vodka and even video games. By embedding consumer products into the heart of the narrative, the Bond series slowly transformed into one of Hollywood's most successful business models, one that other franchises would eventually attempt to replicate. But the success of Bond wasn't just built on luxury goods. No, much like a real spy, the franchise cleverly adapted over time, changing its tone to suit the evolving tastes of moviegoers. Each new James Bond actor brought with them a fresh take on the character. While Sean Connery laid the foundation, each subsequent actor, from Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, to Daniel Craig, injected their own essence into Bond while keeping the core traits that had made the character iconic. Roger Moore brought a sense of humor and lightness to the role in the 70s and 80s, creating some of the most beloved, over-the-top moments of Bond cinema. With Moore's take, the franchise went into overdrive with extravagant action sequences and larger-than-life villains. For a time, Bond was less about sophistication and more about grandiose spectacle, and it worked. By the time Pierce Brosnan took over the mantle in the early 90s, Bond was moving towards slicker action and intense plot lines. The world was changing. Society had entered the digital age, and Bond reflected that. The films began featuring more high-tech gadgets, advanced espionage tools, and real-world geopolitical issues. Brosnan's Bond was a response to the more gritty world of the 90s. But even with the technology at the center of the plot, the fantasy and escapism remained unbroken. However, the greatest transformation came with Daniel Craig's portrayal. Craig entered the Bond franchise with the 2006 film Casino Royale and began to fully reimagine the character. Craig's Bond wasn't just another agent, he was human, raw, and vulnerable. His interpretation brought a grounded sense of realism and physicality to the role. But more than just revamping the character, Craig's era led to an essential reinvention of the marketing machine behind Bond. With the rise of social media and a more tech-savvy world, the marketing surrounding Bond began to take a new form. Advertising campaigns were not confined to the usual posters or magazine ads. By integrating social media platforms, exclusive merchandise drops, behind-the-scenes footage, and viral promotions, the James Bond brand thrived in a new digital space. But perhaps what makes the franchise so consistently relevant and captivating to this day is how Bond stays in tune with its audience's wants and needs. The success of the Bond franchise has never been static. It has adapted, evolved. Whether it's the use of social media, newer marketing strategies, or reimagining Bond as a more nuanced character in Daniel Craig's time, Bond always finds a way to resonate with audiences of the era. Perhaps there's one core secret to this. James Bond, despite his bravado, is also very much a reflection of the world around him. He embodies different ideals during different times. In the Cold War era, Bond was the stoic, heroic defender of freedom. In the modern era, he's complex, flawed, and often caught between his personal demons and his duty to protect the world. This constant reinvention reflects the growing awareness and shifts in societal values, and Bond, the character, keeps up. As we approach the next chapter of this iconic series, the legacy of James Bond stands as both a cinematic marvel and a masterclass in branding and marketing. Whether it's pushing boundaries with thrilling action sequences, leveraging real-world events, or continuously integrating commercial products into the fabric of the franchise, James Bond is the quintessential example of how a single character can transcend film to become an unforgettable and ever-evolving cultural phenomenon. Looking back on how it all began with a small spy novel, it's clear that Bond didn't simply ride the wave of success. No, he shaped the very world of cinematic marketing, creating an interwoven relationship between cinema and consumer culture that would live on for decades to come. So next time you think of James Bond, remember, he's not just 007. He's a sophisticated marketing machine, effortlessly blending high-stakes espionage with the world's most coveted brands. It's this dual mastery that has solidified James Bond as the ultimate cinematic icon, a title that only continues to evolve and redefine the art of storytelling.